Well, welcome all of our viewers to the inaugural vodcast of the Langford Island Sport Capital, vodcast, and I am extraordinarily honored to have as our first guest, Gareth Rees, currently Director of Commercial and Program Relations at Rugby Canada. Gareth, how are you?
Great to see you. Good. Looking forward to having a chat.
Absolutely, and many more. You know, I started this with a goal of highlighting the development of sport facilities, recreation facilities, sport development in Langford, because I think it's really been underrepresented. I think so much has happened out there that's so positive for sport and so positive for wellness. You have a community focus around this stuff. People feel good. Their focus is on healthy activity, you know? So before we get going into all that, okay, Gareth?
Yeah.
Gareth, okay. Look, there's a few of us, okay, I'm a little bit older, a few of us who don't actually know your background, okay, and where you started. And can you just sort of give a brief bio of your relationship and growth in this region in sport?
Sure. Well, I'm proudly an island boy, born in Duncan, and then came down to Victoria pretty quick. My parents are both school teachers that immigrated from the UK. And so I grew up around all sport. I'm a rugby guy now, but I loved all sport. Dad played pro soccer, mom played field hockey. They all played everything when they came to a new community. So sport was a big part of our life. All my aunts and uncles growing up were friends from the sports club. So I grew up here in Victoria. I got a pretty unique perspective on Langford, what it was then and what it's obviously become, and now where I work and get to take my kids to go watch pro sport. So it's come a long way, as you know. But for me personally, I was passionate about all sport. Had great teachers, great schools here in Victoria. Ended up at St. Michael's University School, and sort of rugby and soccer and basketball were my sports. Chose rugby, and then basically it took off for me playing for our first national team for another Victorian man, Gary Johnson, the first World Cup ever in 1987. And from then on, I had a 10-year pro career in Europe. I had a 16-year career with the national team, going to 4 World Cups, and have stayed involved in the game. Was a pro coach in Europe, and then came back in the early 2000s to be chief executive of Rugby Canada. So that's how I got into the admin side of things, and have been in various forms. Bit of a break there for about 10 years, but involved trying to help the current generation of Canadian athletes, boys, girls, men, women, 7s, 15s, all sorts that now goes on, and involved in the commercial side as well, and love the game, love what it can do for kids, love how it keeps people active, not only at the elite level but the other level, and it's a big part of my life. So I'm proudly from these parts, but I've been able to do a little bit overseas, and I've had a few little accomplishments along the way.
That is fantastic. Thank you. And a lot of folks might, well, a lot, including myself, are not aware of the details. My sister also went to St. Michael's, a great rugby school. I think you're being very humble. You are arguably the best rugby player that Canada's ever produced. You're in the Rugby Hall of Fame, I understand. Yes, and
what I will tell you, because I'm very proud of it, I'm the only rugby player in Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. With a whole bunch of other hockey players, but the reason I'm proud of it is because that clearly represents my team, that the group that came through, that took rugby from on not many people's radars in the mid 80s to top 8 in the world, and so it was kind of an achievement for all of us. And then to finally get that at the end of the run, to say, oh, rugby is something now, and now kids get paid to play rugby in Canada. They go to the Olympics to play rugby. And it's a different story. So we're all proud of that we kind of maybe took it from somewhere and put it somewhere else so this generation can benefit.
I think the fact that you have promoted the sport, you've promoted the benefits of the sport, you've promoted the growth of the sport. Canada is so lucky, and our region is so lucky to have you involved. I got to know you 10-ish years ago. I'm not a rugby player. I'm
You're built like one.
I look like one, attaboy. Over 80s. I've been involved with sport when I was much younger, but so you and I got involved as Rugby Canada, which was based, I think, back east, was starting to look for a different place to locate to for a variety of reasons. Ultimately, they chose Langford. Why don't you just kind of review for us why Langford? Like, what, I don't know where it was based. You're going to tell me, maybe Toronto, to here. So let's review why that happened.
Yeah, I think you're being overly generous that Rugby Canada was even looking, because I don't think it was in their wildest dreams they would end up with something, a building, a dedicated office space, training facilities, and what's now a world-class dedicated gym, the Al Sharon Center. What was happening was, traditionally the game has been strong out west, and because it's a winter field sport, we've been on either Vancouver or Victoria for our national teams. Basically, at the time, the team was lifting weights at Pisces. That was at the Saanich pool. They were up at UVic doing some training. They had an office down on Douglas Street, and they were all over the shop. The guys were in the bar half the day, let alone, so it wasn't ideal. And then because of what Stu Young and council did in Langford, because of the fields that were there, and then their appetite to have discussions, this whole thing started with Graham Brown, a great friend of mine. And I talk about a guy who's done something for rugby. I mean, our former CEO. It was his vision, I guess, his probably not vision, because a lot of people could have maybe seen it, but it was his execution, his determination. If I was comparing to another guy, I might say Stu Young. They are similar minds about getting things done. So these two colliding was really for the benefit of rugby, and we ended up with our national offices. I think it was called the Rugby Canada High Performance Center, that is now the PFC offices out at Starlight Stadium, and then full access to the to the fields and to the weights out there, and an incredible level of support for a sport, as I was alluding to earlier, that didn't always get the attention. Maybe up at UVic was after basketball and swimming and rowing was an afterthought. At Pisces there were other sports ahead of us. We very much felt the love in Langford.
Yeah, Mayor Young and his council for years has made a concerted effort to provide the West Shore, particularly their municipality, i.e. Langford, as a place for young families to grow and to work, to live, and to play. And so recreation has always been a real priority, and providing a place for young families to go to and be busy. And Rugby Canada was really one of the first sort of dominoes, the first national dominoes to really propel Langford to the island sport, maybe Canada sport capital it is today. Talk a little bit about the kind of facility response that the city of Langford invested in to really help you guys pick Langford at that time.
Yeah, well, obviously having the two fields there was a huge starting point. And then to have purpose offices built and everything we have a scrummaging area dedicated, which is specific to our sport. Jerry over at City Center Park was amazing in terms of trying to find the guys space to weightlift, and before we had our dedicated gym. So there was very much a can-do attitude, which in sport is huge. We already have enough things working against us as rugby athletes in Canada, playing against the best in the world and trying to head off to the Olympics. So there was a lot working against us. So it was huge that we were able to get in this community that wanted us there. It was, it's unlike anything I ever saw as a player, that we were getting a lot of yeses when we asked for things, or we'll look and try and do it. I look at Mr. Lesky was a big part of that early days. All the staff were great. So these are good people that we brought in. Now there was a bit of a contract there. I mean, we took it on ourselves. Grateful for the support, and we had a couple of goals. We were trying to put Langford on the map, as the whole community was trying to do, but as not Victoria. Very much, Langford as distinct from Victoria. We wanted to take the name around the world and perform well. We wanted to engage with the community and provide them something they can be proud of. And so these were all things that were on our radar, and were probably tougher challenges. I mean, showing up and training and doing that was the easy part. Facilities were great. It was trying to get people, for example, to drive from Victoria to go watch an international rugby match in Langford. Victoria people are, quite traditional, especially in rugby. So those were our challenges. I mean, being very vigilant when we're mentioning our home that it wasn't Victoria. That, we were part of the South Island community, but it was Langford. And so those were things early days that were really important, and that's why it worked for both sides, I guess.
You're so right how that sort of attitude shift had to happen. I mean, for me, not being a rugby player, but being familiar with rugby and the development of rugby, following your trajectory on the world stage. James Bay was the rugby place, and that's smack in the middle of downtown. I think it's at McDonald Park, and it was sort of all rugby there and all rugby. So there's this attitudinal shift. How about how did the people of Langford embrace the athletes? Like you're right. There's the facility part, but they have to live somewhere. They had to work somewhere. Somebody has to finance how they move around. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, again, the door was open. They were trying. They were a little bit taken aback. I mean, there's a tough sporting community out there, right? Obviously, you got a lot of hockey players, a lot of lacrosse players. So that side of our sport didn't phase anyone in Langford view. But when you saw the women show up, right, and we have a really strong women participation level. When you saw one of our clubs move out there, West Shore moved out to that direction from Velux up in Gordon Head. So they started to see these opportunities, and then every few months they could go down and watch international sport or pro sport in their little stadium that was growing every year on their doorstep. And it was the Victoria people that had to drive. So I think they appreciate it. I'll tell you one funny story. I do some commentary for the for international TV for sevens and for matches. And I said to you, we were trying to really differentiate Langford and Victoria so everyone knew that it was its own community. I got a call when we brought the women's sevens event, the HSBC World Series of Sevens. So that's 10 stops around the world, a format kind of like Formula One, where they go to a different city every day. So that's like every weekend, sorry. So it's cities like Hong Kong, Cape Town, London, Paris, Dubai. I mean, we're all over the world. And we put our women's event in Langford, and we were very vocal about it. So I got called up with a different hat on, saying, will you commentate for the women's event in Langford? I said, yeah, I'd love to. Obviously, I'm happy with that. They said, that's great. We can, we'll send you the contract over, and we'll book your flights from Victoria to Langford for you. So that kind of summed up how we had completed the differentiation. People really didn't know it was, a suburb, if you will. It was its own place. So yeah, a lot of that was going on, but the women were a big part of it, but also some pretty awesome test matches. That's international for rugby fans, one country against another, where Canadian boys and girls were able to play on home soil on the field they train on. And we've never had that advantage. I never had that advantage as a player for 2 decades. Hans Diggity and all the greats, Mark Wyatt, all these people gone before me had never had that advantage.
Yeah. The actual direct link, that I was involved with in those early days was through the Langford Economic Development Commission. There was a whole variety of different people in there that were committed to the economic development of Langford. And of course, sport and recreation was a key component to that. I think that's where you and I actually first around that table, really diverse group of people around that. But you just reflect a little bit about those people that were there and the role of that committee in promoting recreation. Yeah,
well, basically champions of the community. But for sports' sake, champions who got it. You got the likes of Dan Matthews from Eco Oasis, Steve Baxter from 4 Points, Jim Hartshorn's in there. People who get our sport, they get that sometimes you need a little help getting over the line. And that committee, the Economic Development Committee, the EDC, consistently is there, not only for rugby, for all sports, whether it's the Shamrocks or the Rebels. They're there to take some of the funds generated from hotels largely in this case, and spend them back so that funnel keeps coming, so they can invest in things that drive more hotel rooms, more interest in Langford, more spending in Langford. So it's a win-win for everyone. But you probably, again, we can't take for granted the quality of those people and the fact that they're committed to sport and they see the value of sport. So the EDC has been hugely important for bringing these events here.
Yeah, and many of those folks are still involved. So it's an ongoing commitment and ongoing support.
No question. And they love Langford as well. And they love nothing more than bringing a big event.
Why don't we do a little fast forward here? So there's this amazing start with support of Mayor Young and council. Let's fast forward to where we're at now today. Langford is the home of multiple national programs. There's a biking program. There's a new tennis facility, obviously rugby. There's an extraordinary, I don't know if I just said this, cycling infrastructure in the region. amazing mountain climbing opportunities, golf. I mean, this is really the center of sport for Vancouver Island, without a doubt. And you guys are like the jewel in the crown, so to speak. Talk about where we're at today, the facilities that you use, the training facilities, etc.
Yeah, I mean everything from, you're right, bouldering to golf to any of the other events. You can't do it unless you have facilities and support. So that grew over time. We now have Donna in place, who's a great resource when you're bringing in an event. But in terms of pure facilities, we not only have that kind of support to help market our events, to put up billboards on the highway, to have the community basically immersed in our information getting out there. But we have, for Rugby Canada, we obviously have the 2 artificial pitches, Gowdy Field and Starlight Stadium. We have the stadium, which is now 5,000-6,000, will be going to 10,000. And that's, again, grown around us, which is a massive investment. And we're fully aware of that as a partner. That's a major commitment by council and the community of Langford. That's a lot of money spent. But we also are committed to bringing unique events. My 10 and 12-year-old boys are sitting outside being told to keep quiet during this. When they want to go watch international soccer, or when they want to go watch international rugby, we're now going to Langford. That's where they get to see these unique experiences, let alone, the Tough Mother and all the other stuff that's going on. That is a destination for them. And that is where the community of the Southern Island goes to watch international sport right now because of the facilities. So there's the stadium. Added to that in the last few years, hospitality boxes, because part of the model for events is you have to bring in revenue to pay for all this travel, all these athletes that come in, all the support staff. So if you don't have things like hospitality boxes to sell and make that a little bit more money and give your fans a great experience, then it doesn't work. So these things have all grown over time. When we first went into what was West Hill Stadium, that stuff wasn't really around, and it was a bit of a shoestring, and we built it up. So the city of Langford and the community of Langford needs to be proud of that, but they also need to see it as this jewel, this something that Royal Athletic Park cannot provide. I love Victoria and I love playing at Royal Athletic Park. They just can't compete, nor can UVic for that matter, my alma mater, because this support system was built up over time. Add to that, in our case for rugby, literally a world-class gym, the Al Sharon Center, where we raised private funds, got support from the city in terms of the land, and now have this facility that not only rugby, but the community can access, and is really, truly world-class. I played in 4 pro clubs over my time, never played in anything that resembled that, and there's not many around the world. So we're very lucky that way.
Open to the public, Gareth?
We're just getting through the next phase, that we're trying to create opportunities. There are some small groups that use it. Obviously, we've had a little bit of partnership with PFC, the Pacific Football Club, the soccer team, and we worked with them. But that's definitely, as we go forward, that I think we'll see more of the public in there in a bit of a new direction.
That would be really cool to have common folk just and at least see these world-class athletes working. It's quite a there's so much infrastructure and support that needs to happen to have a game, to have parking and just to have flow of traffic, for example, is really complex. And that's where you really need the support of the city and the community to make that happen. And I think that city of Langford is doing their best to make that work, aren't they?
They are. They're doing. There's a few hurdles along the way, and if I say hydro lines, we'll all know what we're talking about. Yeah. So that's been tough. But hey, we don't have the resources to battle that. But they've been battling away, and now I believe there's a solution, which is great. It's coming forward. Yes. But you're right. Everything from parking and traffic, and in the early days, we had the buses. We had the trolley car coming out from town.
I remember those days. Yeah.
We had to break the back of Victoriaites who wouldn't travel. It was too long for them, right? That 25-minute drive was just going to kill them, right?
Yeah. To see world-class athletes.
Another piece of the puzzle, as you know well, John, is the television. So we want to expose our athletes and their performance to the whole community. One, because they deserve it, because they worked really hard their whole careers. Two, we want to attract new families, new kids to see this great game, and they can wave the maple leaf. And also, as I said to you, part of what we want to do is show them how great this place is to live and train and play in. And so Langford gets the benefit of that. Every broadcast I do from here, the opening minute is beauty shots of Langford and all the things that you can do from, as we talked about earlier, from cycling to shopping to whatever you want to do in Langford.
Yeah.
That's the value of it. So that goes in our case. I'll tell you, the last couple of games, we're going TSN 1 is the next game we have coming up. We'll be going into Italy. The World Series of Sevens, which has been here every year for the last 6 years, barring a bit of COVID break, goes to 91 countries around the world. So there is a very real impact of putting Langford on the map and showing it in a good light.
You know, it's fascinating, this continuum of time that you and I have both referenced. As Stu references, Mayor Young references many times, this used to be a dog patch out here. Certainly isn't anymore. But it's not just Langford. It's Colwood is exploding. All parts of Colwood. I think it's Royal Bay, for example, down by the water, over 4,000 homes. You have Souk exploding because so much of the rest of Lower Vancouver Island is expensive to live in. The West Shore has become, the go-to place for young families. So you had really Langford start this momentum, continue the momentum, but really now you're part of I would argue, and I think the facts prove me right, the fastest growing community in Canada. You're right in the middle of it.
Yeah. And what I would say is, this happens in, north of Toronto and Surrey, right? There's all these developments. What I would say that maybe Langford people shouldn't take for granted is you're a part of this and you've got affordable family housing, but you can also walk down the street and watch international sport because of what we're talking about. And it's not only watching the sport, but when you see the young girls or the young boys going for an autograph, connecting, or Brazil or Fiji goes to their school to do a little coaching clinic, which happens throughout our tournaments every time we have a team in town. You get those moments and you never know what that's doing to spark a child to be active, to go for their dreams. It doesn't have to be rugby, any of their dreams. And I think that's the piece where, you can have affordable housing, you can have communities where you can afford to live with good family life, but this takes it another level where the kids get inspired and say, I have 10 and 12-year-old boys. I'm very aware of what they notice. And I tell you what, they would sit in front of a screen all day if they could. But if I could take them out to an international soccer game and Jamaica's playing Canada, then I'd rather they took some input from that as to what their dreams might be.
Yeah. How about we focus now finally a little bit to the future here? I've been a businessman all my life, an entrepreneur all my life. You probably battle this quite a lot. That being, filling a stadium in Vancouver, BC Place, 50, 60,000 people, I don't know. Maybe same thing for Toronto. And there's just no way that's ever going to happen, well, at least in my lifetime, in Lower Vancouver Island. So you must be sort of facing these pressures all the time, this sort of globalization of sport, and maybe talking a little bit about where Rugby Canada is going, both men and women program. What do we have to look forward to in the future, Gareth?
Yeah, it's a great point. The business of sport is changing. It's become more expensive to do business. The opportunities are different, and you got to keep pivoting. And again, it's important to have someone in charge and a council that gets the value of it and then is willing to act, right? So we've just had to go away from my sport just for a second. We've had the FIFA World Cup announced where soccer will be hosted, and those games rightfully will be in BC Place because you need 50, 60,000 to pay the bills for a FIFA World Cup. But we are already talking about Langford being a training center. So those teams will be in the community. Now, there will be costs like replacing the grass. Those are the kind of issues that have to be discussed through. But this community will get benefit. Obviously, they can't put 60,000 people on a Saturday afternoon in the stadium. That's not, no one on the island can do that. But for me, as an island boy and with two boys sitting around here, that we do the next best thing. And so with the stadium going to 10,000 for Rugby Canada, that means that we can go after bigger events. That basically is kind of a threshold for us too. There is a global tournament, the women's 15 it's called, and we are looking at bringing that here. We would look at something, and then I can't commit to this, but perhaps two of the lesser profile weekends, that's 3 or 4 games, would be in Langford, and then the final finale weekend where you could get 30, 40,000 people in the stadium, that would be a BC Place. So it allows us to think like that and to find solutions. So yeah, for Rugby Canada, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. Obviously, we have a marquee event that puts 75,000 people through BC Place over a 2-day weekend, and that pays a lot of bills. It's a great opportunity, but that's not it for us. We have other things we want to do, and the stadium.
Plus, you are Rugby Canada.
Yes.
I mean, everything can't happen here. We have to let other parts of this amazing country benefit from your amazing sport and you and all of your work. Yeah.
So we do, and it's a destination. And as an older guy who used to play the game, we ask kids to move from other communities, and it's pretty important to me to say, if you're in university, you can go up the road to UVic because that's my alma mater, and I have faith they're going to get an experience. And if you're going to move out here with your young family or by yourself or with your partner, you can live in Langford and you're going to get a good experience. So that's pretty important to me, just on a personal level, that you tell them to do and move somewhere nice.
Listen, Gareth, I'm so honored. We're very, very lucky. Our listeners, our community, the city of Langford, the West Shore, to have you involved. Very much lucky about that. And I hope to continue to have a dialogue with you about Rugby Canada and about the great facility growth. Some more maybe experiences we can talk about down the road.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, John. And the work isn't done. You got to keep evolving. These 10 and 12-year-old boys are going to be 19-year-old boys soon, and hopefully we can keep evolving so they can maybe compete on these fields they go to watch.
You and I are going to stay the same age.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Good to talk to you.
Talk to you soon.